Well, good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you taking time out of a Sunday afternoon to be a part of the Tutku webinar. And so I'm leading this off with a presentation in English here on the subject of Noah's Ark and the flood in the text and archaeology of Roman Asia Minor. And I think you'll find this very interesting, which I do as well. So I'd like to welcome you all. So the theme of Noah's Ark and the flood continues to be very popular, not only in Turkey, but also in the United States. So when we do our visits to academic society meetings with Levent and Aaron and Cenk and others from Tutku who come, we always have people asking questions about what's going on with explorations related to Noah's Ark and the flood here in Turkey. And so perhaps you had not heard about it, but a major theme park was built a few years ago in the state of Kentucky in the United States. And the park is called the Ark Encounter. And they've literally taken the dimensions from the book of Genesis and rebuilt a boat in this shape. You can see in the background, 155 meters long, 26 meters wide, and 15.5 meters high. And so many people come and visit this park to get a look at what this particular interpretation of the recreation of the Ark of Noah is all about. So that's in the United States. Well, in Turkey, there continues to be a lot of interest in the historic Mount Ararat. This past May, I made a trip to Armenia. And so you might be saying, this is not how Küçük and Büyük Arada looks like from the Turkish side. Well, it isn't. This is from the Armenian side. And I was sharing this place with Russian soldiers who are also touring there. So I thought it'd be interesting to take a picture here with some Russian soldiers in the background. So this is a little bit further down. And you can see Turkey right there in the middle of the screen. The Aras River is right there separating Turkey and Armenia. And this is a very famous church in Armenia called Korvirap, and it has to do with the founder of the Armenian church, Gregory, who came from Kayseri and back to Armenia and began the church, and he was imprisoned here for almost 10 years by the king. But again, you can see the two mountains from the eastern side here. So many of you have seen this view from the Turkish side, from Dol Beyazıt, and the big and small Arada there, Mount Ararat. And so there continues to be a lot of interest on these as possible resting place for Noah's Ark here in Turkey. And so there's been a series of symposiums. This is from the most recent one. And some of you know Oktay Beli from Istanbul University, and he's been remains the leading proponent of Arada being the place of Mount Ararat, as we see in the ancient texts, including the book of Genesis. Of course, there's an alternate tradition that the site of Noah and the flood is related to Judida down in southeastern Turkey, near the Tigris, the Dicle River, running just below. And this is the view taken from just south of Şırnak. So I was here this past May as well for a conference I'll mention in just a minute. And so this is looking at Judi Mountain, obviously much lower than Arada in terms of elevation. And this is taking a look at Judida from the Mesopotamian plain to the south. So we're almost at the border there between Iran, Syria, and Turkey down here. And this is a view from near just northwest of Silopi, down there looking at the mountain. And so this is a kind of an aerial topographic view showing what Judida looks like. And so the projected site of the ark that you see in the lower right there. This is from a visit of Gertrude Bell in the early 20th century, showing the structure that was there on Judy at that time. Supposedly, this church was built out of the remains of the ark there at Sephine, where you can see there. And then on the upper left remains some of the Assyrian reliefs that are still on the south side of Judida. And so again, pointing to the antiquity of this site. So as I said, this past year, there was a symposium there, the second international symposium there. And what I'm presenting this afternoon is part of the presentation that I gave at this particular symposium. So they're preparing Judida for tourism out of Shernok. And so one of these days, Tutku Tours, I'm sure, will be offering tours down into this area for those people who are interested in seeing one of the sites related. So I personally think that historically this is the more likely of the two sites. Arada is a very late tradition. Again, Judida seems to me a more likely site historically related to the resting place of the ark. So we're going to skip from Eastern Turkey, and we're going to be looking at traditions in Western Turkey. So looking specifically at Apamea, Kelenai, a modern city of Dinar. And you can see this map that Tutku developed for me of the province of Asia with the 13 administrative districts called an assize or a caventus. And Apamea was a very important city in the province of Asia in the Roman period. And of course, an important road junction in Western Asia Minor. And so even today, modern Turkish highways, there's about 5 highways that come together. They're basically mirroring the roads section that, or the roads that were in antiquity. And just running to the east was, of course, Pisidian Antioch, Yalvach, and Iconium. And so Paul, at least on 2 journeys, would have traveled through Apamea on his way to westward to the province of Asia. Now, Cenk and Levent and I made a trip into this area a few years ago. So it's really rich archaeologically, and unfortunately, we seldom take groups into this area, but it's very important for early Christianity and Judaism. The city around Dinar, there's archaeological realia, artifacts everywhere. And as we drove around in our van that day, we kind of stumbled onto various things. So on the west part of the city, this is the garage and parking area for the city's garbage trucks and other vehicles there, and they have an open air museum. So we drove in the gate, asked permission to stop and take a look at it. And you can see a milestone on the left with a number of inscriptions and other things just sitting in this open air museum on the west side of Dinar today. There's also a big open field as you come into Dinar from Afyon that has a number of inscriptions and other things. So they could very easily have a very nice archaeology museum in Dinar today based on all of the archaeological finds around the city. So one of the things I wanted to see was the very famous inscription that is now at the train station there in Dinar. And any of you are familiar with the famous calendar inscription from 9 BC of the Roman governor Fabius Maximus. So copies of this have found in Priene, and most recently a very complete copy found down in Metropolis that's been published. But Hassan Moai has published on this as well. And so the inscription there is there to the left vertically, and it's been built into that slab there at the train station. So we're standing there with a local historian who's a lawyer, Mehmet Özal, and he's written a very nice volume in Turkish and English about his city there. And he served as our guide as we went around Dinar. So again, very historic city. And as you come into Dinar from the east, you pass this a very nice park area with a lot of water. We had chai here, and it indicates the rich, abundant water because, of course, the Butte Menderes, the meander, begins around Dinar, and also the traditions around Marius in this area with the water. And of course, this is going to come to play in just a minute as we talk about traditions related to Noah around ancient Apamea or modern Dinar. So this is a very strange historical phenomenon that we have in Turkey. And we see that in the first century already, the city is called Apames Kibotu. So Strabo mentions it, Ptolemy, these ancient historians, and this city is already being, of course, ancient cities had, because there were a number of Apames, this happens to be the one that's related to the Kibotos. And so the Roman historian Christian Habich has observed many years ago how to explain Kibotos in connection with the name Apamea is a long-standing difficulty. So historians still struggle to understand why this word Kibotos, which refers to chests or boxes in which commercial goods were carried in antiquity, was associated with this city. Many of you have seen the wonderful monograph by Peter Thonman called The Meander Valley. And in this, he writes, the Apameans minted an extraordinary series of coins with a design depicting two scenes from the biblical story of Noah. And this coinage issue was under 6 different emperors. You can see their names there, beginning with Septimius Severus and ending here with Trebonianus Gallus. And so these coins were issued from Apamea beginning around AD 193 and ending about 253. So we're looking at now Noah shifting geographically from eastern Turkey here all the way to western Turkey in the province of Asia. So here's what one of these coins looks like. Now this is the one issued. You can see the bust on the obverse, the front of the coin of Septimius Severus. And there's actually a website on ancient coinage that shows all of these coins dealing with Noah and the flood. So it's quite interesting. And so we're going to be talking about the reverse of the coin here. So you notice on the right side of the coin, you have a man and a woman inside some kind of a box there. And then on the left side, they're standing. And we'll talk about the meaning of this. And notice above each, we have a dove, 2 birds above them as well. And then where I have the red rectangle there, we see written in Greek the word Noe. So it's identifying who is in this box or who is standing. And then at the bottom, we have in Greek the name of the city that's issued at Apameo. So that's of Apamea, or the city that issued the coin. So this is the first of the series. So we'll talk about some of these elements here. So we see Noah and his wife looking out of a box-shaped ark called a kibotos. Now, in the Greek Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, this is the word that's used for the actual boat there, kibotos. And so now the iconography or the depiction of it has changed from a ship now to one of these boxes that they used to carry goods in antiquity. So the word kibotos meaning both things. And we see now Noah's name, as I mentioned in Greek, Noe, and many of you're going to see in the specimens we're looking at next through where the name is worn out. What's unusual about these coins is Noah's wife never usually appears in other discussions or depictions. But here we have on the coins, Noah is with his wife together on the coins. As we mentioned, we have the two on the left have come out of the ark, of the kibotos, and they're standing on dry ground. And we'll look at another coin in a minute. You'll notice their right hands are upraised in thanks. And this historically is like this, called the orans position. And you'll see this position even in later Byzantine depictions as well. Two hands up, and it's called orans. And it's still a posture you'll see in Orthodox and Syriani churches, the way people pray in this way. And then finally, you'll see two doves depicted. One is perching on the lid of the ark, and then the second descends on the left carrying an olive branch. And again, this goes back to the whole story of Noah in Genesis 8, when he is trying to determine when the floodwaters have gone down, and he sends out the doves. And the first time, and later the dove comes back with an olive branch, and Noah realizes that the floodwaters now have lowered, and the dry land is beginning to reappear. So this is all part of these coins. So here's the same issue from a little later, from Gordian III. So notice that the name of Noah, the only thing you can see in the middle of the box is the omega, and the rest is worn off. Now, notice in this issue, there's no dove unless it's worn off above Noah and his wife in the ark. And then on the left, you can see this particular dove, rather than having the olive branch in its mouth, it's standing on the branch. So it's just a little bit different in terms of the depiction of the scene. And we go to the issue of Philip I, and we go back to the more traditional one. We don't have any inscription on the box, but again, we have the dove over the top, and then the dove over the standing Noah and his wife. And again, both their right hands are raised, and the dove has the olive branch in its mouth. So again, we have these very interesting depictions then of Noah on the ark on these coins issued for over 50 years from the city of Apame, a modern dinar. Now, we want to talk next about this interesting collection of books called the Sibylline Oracles. We have an English translation in 2 volumes now. I don't know if there's ever been a Turkish translation of these, but these are sort of prophetic material reflecting pagan, Christian, and Jewish origins that are written over a period of about 500 years. So you're looking at roughly around 200 BC on up to roughly the 400s AD. And these started out of Rome, but associated with the famous Sibyl from Cumae near modern Naples today. But again, one of the important Sibyls known in the ancient world came from very near where many of you are, just northeast of Cheshme at Erythrai. And so the very famous temple there, that was Erythrai. And these are 2 depictions of the Sibyl. They're one from the church in Siena, Italy. And of course, those of you who have been to Rome, to the Vatican, and seen the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo did this depiction of the Sibyl of Erythrai. You can see down at the bottom there, it specifically says she's from Erythrai in his depiction of the Sibyl. And so we see Noah being mentioned in these ancient prophecies beginning in the 2nd century BC. So very early, the Sibyl and Noah are associated. Just a few things that are written about him in book 1. Noah was upright, true, trustworthy, did noble deeds. After he entered the ark with his family and the animals, God flooded the world entirely many days with rain. After the dove failed to return to the ark, Noah knew land was near. And then finally, but when the heavenly craft had swum back and forth on the dashing waves by the billows of the sea, it was fastened on a small beach and made fast. Now, this is a bit different than the traditional story that it landed on a mountain. And of course, the that tradition is associated with the two mountains we just talked about in eastern Turkey. So the question, where was this small beach? So we're also told where the location of that beach was. And here again, it's a mountain, but it's in Phrygia and it's called Ararat. So you might again think this is very strange that suddenly we have an identification in the oracles putting Mount Ararat now in Western Turkey near Apamea. So it becomes further localized. The springs of the great river Marius had sprung up. In this place, the ark remained on lofty summits when the waters subsided. And it's in this place now that Noah and his family animals jumped to the land from the ark. And we see that among even ancient historians, there was a difference of opinion of where the ark landed. So one from 3rd century BC, Berosus localized Mount Ararat in Armenia, and Apollonius Molon also placed the Mount Ararat in Armenia too. But we come into a 2nd century historian by the name of Julius Africanus, who states in his book called The Chronography that the ark landed on the mountains of Ararat. He mentions, first of all, the traditions that came from Berosus and Apollonius in Parthia, but then he adds something very interesting. Some say that they are at Kelani of Phrygia, and he says, I have seen both places. So he verifies now that he has visited Apamea to check out this tradition, that it was in Western Turkey, Western Asia Minor, that the ark landed near this city on the mountains. So where is that mountain today? So there you can see just to the southeast of Dinar, we have what is believed to be the Ararat that's mentioned in the Sibylline oracles today called Akda, much lower than either Judy or Arada, only almost 1,900 meters tall. And so this is on the road going down to Burdur, to the southeast, that the mountain is located. And so this is where the tradition that we see is in this area. So we come to the interesting question now. So we see the Sibylline oracles locating Ararat near Apamea. We see the city of Apamea issuing these coins. So one scholar by the name of Kelp suggests that the pagan Greek flood myth of Deucalion and Pyrrha combined with the biblical flood stories are reflected on this coinage. So it's kind of a blending, a syncretism of local flood traditions. And this is why these coins were issued. Peter Thonman says the Noah myth was introduced on the coinage due to Christian influence. However, the problem I have with Thonman's reconstruction there is that Christianity, of course, at this stage is still not legalized. And we actually have periods of Christian persecution occurring under Septimius Severus, who issued coins here. He forbade conversion in AD 202, and Maximinus also persecution. So in my opinion, it's very doubtful that the local Christian community had much influence here in the city to mint such Noah coins. But we do know that there was a very strong Jewish presence in Phrygia, going clear back to 210, when we know that 2,000 families were moved into Phrygia and to Lydia. And we also know that there are a number of inscriptions that nearby cities to Apamea, Ecmonia, and Eumenia that mention Jews. And so I personally think so the Noah coins really are as a result of the influence of the Jewish communities here rather than the Christian ones. That possibly the ending of the Noah coinage took place because of increased hostility to Jews and resulting imperial legislation against them. So just give you a couple more views of landscape around Dinar today. And part of our trip that we made there, we did go up to the site of Ecmonia. Not a lot there. It's near the village of Ahat, southeast of Ushak. And then outside of Eshikla, or around Ishikla is the ancient city of Umenia, noted for a very important epigraphic formula called the Eumenean formula. So we know there are a number of Jewish settlements, settlers who lived in this area around Dinar. So and the traditions related to the flood there are quite interesting. So we're going to jump media here from coins and go and talk about mosaics for just a second. So some of you have perhaps been to down in ancient Cilicia, Cilicia Pedius, smooth Cilicia, this east of Ghana, and today Mises or Yacapanar, and located there on the Pyramus River. And there's an ancient Roman bridge there that's been restored. And there's the ancient Acropolis that there's a gendarme station on. And just to the south of the Acropolis, we'll be talking about a mosaic that was discovered there and covered in a building. And this is where I first saw this. So this is a photograph. Notice of the ark. This is out of one of Fatih Cimok's books, who had permission to come in there and take really professional photographs. And you can see a very clear depiction, notice, of the kibotos, or the ark, or the chest that we've been talking about that was also depicted on the coins. And you notice at the top, we have an inscription there. It said kibotos Noe, and then it ends with the Greek letter rho. So again, the inscription identifies specifically for us what we are looking at. There's the full mosaic. So I have the inscription circled again. And this is, again, from Fatih Bey's book. And showing the ark. Notice we see no figures of Noah here, but we all see all the animals, both mammals and birds, grouped around the ark in this wonderful mosaic. So this was excavated by two German archaeologists from 55 to 58, and it was a large basilical structure there. And in the western part of the nave, they found this mosaic panel depicting Noah's ark with animals. Should also mention that they found part of this story of Samson, likewise, in the mosaic. They dated this mosaic to the late 4th century. Most scholars today put it a century later into the 5th century. And Budd, in trying to interpret what kind of a structure they're looking at, believed it was a church, possibly a martyrium. But Kitzinger later suggested that the structure perhaps was a synagogue and not a church. And so this continues to be debated today. The Jewish scholar Rachel Haklili believed it was probably a synagogue. But if you look at Stephen Hill's book, who's a Byzantine church historian, he wrote a book on the churches of Cilicia. He concludes, in the present state of knowledge, it's safest to assume that this building was indeed a church. And as we mentioned, the Noah panel has this inscription, Kibotos Noe, the Ark of Noah. And then it ends with Rho. So the interpretation of that has been uncertain, but most likely represents the word Rumenas, and abbreviated here to a meaning redeemer or deliverer. So the inscription probably should be translated Ark of Noah, the rescuer, since Noah rescues both humanity and the birds and animals through the ark here. So really a significant mosaic that we have there. Now, in the rebuilding of the new Adana Museum, they removed the mosaic from Mises at Mopsuestia, and now it kind of takes pride of place among all the mosaics in the new Adana Museum. So if you have not seen the new Adana Museum, it's very nicely presented. And this is the photograph. They have a nice walkway as you go by there that I took from the walkway. Unfortunately, the orientation is that you're looking at it from the side, so you can't see the ark as well as we were able to see it before in the building in Mises. So this is in Adana today. So as we look at some distinctives of this, so we see the ark is depicted similarly. It's a four-legged open chest with the lid folded back. There's a dove inside with another dove emerging from the side. And then we saw the two rows of animals surrounding. So the inner row is birds, the outer row mammals. Just go back and look at that. You can see the mammals on the outside, the birds on the inside. In this one, we have Noah and his family missing, but we don't know. Perhaps that part of the mosaic has been lost. Now, there's a second mosaic that's been laid later in the western part of the nave that it's not as nicely done. It's more crude, and it does have another scene of the Noah story. I do not have a picture of that, and I've not seen a picture of that. And we think maybe it's a lion and panther, but there are two figures on it. And some suggest that the larger one, it represents Noah, and the smaller one, maybe Shem or Japheth, one of his two sons. And again, the arms are raised in Oron's position, and they're giving thanks for their salvation from the floodwaters. So you can see that we do have some definite similarities between this mosaic and the coins we saw from Apamea. Now, another Noah mosaic was found in the city of Gerasa or Jerash, one of the Greek cities of the Decapolis in Jordan. So this is just north of Amman. And it was discovered in 1929 by a team of British and American archaeologists. And they were able to date this mosaic to around the 530s when the synagogue was changed into a church. And the western colonnade of the synagogue's atrium was demolished then to install this, the apse of the church. So the church being built right over the ancient synagogue. And so we have the mosaic with Noah being put into the entry area, or the vestibule of the early synagogue. Now, this time the scene depicts Noah and his family. On the left are his sons, Shem and Japheth, but only their heads and their Greek names have survived. Now, in this particular mosaic, the ark is absent, but a scholar by the name of Dvorzhetsky notes, should be recalled that the main section of the mosaic floor is also missing. So it's possible the ark might have existed in the mosaic that was destroyed. So this shows you where Gerasa is in Jordan, and then where in the city, in the northwest quadrant of the city, you can see the drawing of the basilical church there, and the part over the apse area where the mosaic of Noah was located. And if you look to the lower right, you can see the lettering, and maybe a bit small to see, it says Artemisium. So there's a temple of Artemis at the site. And so this church is just built above the temple of Artemis. So last September, when I was in Jordan with the Tutku fam trip, we made a point of visiting this area. I wanted to see where the church and synagogue was located. So you can see the remains of the Temple of Artemis. This is one of the premier archaeological sites in Jordan today. So definitely recommend you visit it sometime if you get an opportunity to go to Jordan. And just follow up the hill to the right, and this is the remains of the church today. And so you can see where the apse is located. So in this area that I have with the red rectangle again, this is where the mosaic related to Noah was discovered. So this is all covered up now. You can't see anything except basically the location where it was at. So I have no color pictures of this at all, but these are some of the remains there. You can see at the lower part of the screen, there's a menorah there as well with the drawings. So I need to keep moving along. I've just got a few minutes and I'm done. Now, amazingly, in a new excavation in Galilee in Israel, you can see this map there up in by the Sea of Galilee, a site called Hukok. They excavated a synagogue. American archaeologist Jody Magnus has been working there. And in the context of this, they discovered another Noah mosaic. And so this is the official photograph that was published. And you can see where the red circle is, one of the legs for the ark, the kibotos there. And again, you can see the various animals, in this both birds and mammals, that are a part of this. And then a red tiled building to the right part of the screen. And so this was found in 2014. And again, this is dated to early 5th century. And mosaics were found throughout. And again, they found the story of Samson there, as well as similar to the also found in Mopsuestia. And so 5 mosaic panels were located there. And then, as I mentioned, Noah's Ark was found there again, with all kinds of animals being represented, elephants, leopards, donkeys, etc., that I have listed there. And then I said to the right of the ark, which we saw with the one leg, all that remains is a red tiled roof, and we're not sure what this structure is. So here's a little bit better picture. I've lightened it up to make it a little bit clearer. So even though it's heavily damaged, we can recognize very clearly that it's showing Noah and the ark. So let's compare these mosaics that we've seen between Mopsuestia, Gerasa, and now Hukok. So the ark is in the center of Mopsuestia. We didn't see one at Gerasa, but it may be missing. At Mopsuestia, the animals are shown singly, and Noah's family is not even depicted. But in Gerasa, the animals are together in pairs, and we do see Noah and his family. And again, in Mopsuestia and Hukok, the ark that we do see is this wooden box, this kibotos with legs. Unlike Mopsuestia, the Hukok mosaic does not have an inscription on the lid identifying this as that of Noah. The animals in Mopsuestia appear in 2 registers to be viewed from the sides. The animals in Hukok are from the front. We saw scenes from the life of Moses appearing in both of these. And then finally, these scenes of Noah and the ark are even rare in synagogues. And then my conclusion is that this discussion about is the structure in Mopsuestia a church or a synagogue, I think especially now with the discovery in Hukok of this synagogue, that the structure there should be identified as a synagogue and not a church. So, of course, we just had a recent another synagogue discovered in Sideh. And so with this, I think we do have a synagogue in Mopsuestia as well. So a couple of things in conclusion. So the Jewish section of the Sibylline Oracles put Mount Ararat in Phrygia and the landing place of the ark with Noah and his family on a mountain near Apamea. And the civic leaders of Apamea inscribed it on their imperial coinage for 50 years in the late 2nd, early 3rd centuries. And again, we have 2 scenes that are predominating, Noah and his flood in a box-shaped ark, a kibotos, the Greek word, and then they're standing outside the ark on dry land with right hands upraised in praise. So the portrayal of the ark and the animals from the flood in the mosaics at Mopsuestia identifies this specifically as the Ark of Noah, the rescuer. And so, as I said before, these mosaics with no Noah theme found both in Gerasa and Hukok, I think, suggests to us that the building in Mopsuestia is a synagogue and not a church. Thank you for your attention.